What's going on? What's happening? Welcome to episode number 6 of Arring It Out. I am your host, Jamie Arrington. If you've never listened to us before, this is a sports podcast. We're here to talk about your story, your journey. We talk to former athletes, former entertainers, other people involved in the business to find out where they've been, what they've done, and where they're going. If you missed last week's episode, go back and check it out. We had former New York Mets catcher Barry Lyons on with an amazing story about his journey through professional baseball, then his bouts with depression and addiction, and then how Katrina pretty much took everything he owned. So if you missed that episode, go back, check it out, episode 5 of Arring It Out. Just a reminder, this Thursday night, if you're in the South Mississippi region or if you're within driving distance, this Thursday night, July the 28th, don't miss this show. Laughs for Life presents Frank Caliendo. Yes, that Frank Caliendo, the one you've seen on ESPN, doing the impressions of John Madden, John Gruden, most recently Donald Trump. Frank Caliendo at the Sanger Theater in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We've sold a lot of tickets to this show. We've got a few left, so jump on it if you want to come out. The show starts at 7:30 p.m., and you can get your tickets at laughs4life.com. laughs4life.com. All of the proceeds from this show and all of the activities going on with it will be going to the International Myeloma Foundation as well as the Forrest General Cancer Center here in Hattiesburg. So not only are you going to have a great night of entertainment, but you will also be donating money to a great cause. I will be hosting this event, so come out, come see me, come by and say hey. It's always a good time. Now we've got a very special guest on today's episode, but before I get to that, the big event coming up, I guess next week, August the 6th, Brett Favre is going to be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame, or the Pro Football Hall of Fame, as I think they call it. I just wanted to reflect back on some of my Favre memories. I mean, this is a guy that, I've only ran into him a few times, never really sat down and talked with a guy, but it's always been an inspiration. As being somebody from South Mississippi, being somebody who attended the University of Southern Mississippi, and to see him go on and do amazing things, it's just been incredible. I think back, I was a child when I was at the first game he came into. We were playing the Tulane Green Wave, and I talk about that a little bit later on in this podcast. I remember sitting watching the game against Florida State in Jacksonville with my father. I think that's the first time I sat down and watched an entire game on television, due to my limited attention span. I remember listening on the radio when he threw the Hail Mary pass against Louisville. I remember being devastated when he had his car accident in college, and then watching him come back against Alabama and Auburn was truly amazing. Then you're watching the draft, you see him go, you're sitting there going, man, I can't believe he's going in the second round. This guy is one of the best quarterbacks, my limited homer mind had ever seen. And then I remember, kind of being disappointed, like, the Falcons, I sure thought he would do better. And then the next thing you know, he's in Green Bay, lighting it up. Could not have been more excited about that. And then you think about him getting to play in the Super Bowl in New Orleans, right down the road from his hometown. And you may not know this, you may not have listened to any of the previous episodes, but I was actually the mascot at Southern Miss when I got to college. From 1999 to 2002, Seymour, the mascot at Southern Miss, actually wore the number 4. So the years I was there, we got to wear the number 4, in a Southern Miss jersey. Not many people get to say that unless you're just a fan. You don't get to wear it on the field, on the sideline. So that was pretty cool. When I left Southern Miss, I went to the Chicago Bears to be the mascot. My first regular season game, of course, was at home in the brand new Soldier Field in 2003 on Monday Night Football against the Green Bay Packers. So there you are. You look on the other sideline. This is the first time I've ever cheered against this guy. I had to. They paid me to. No, but he pretty much let us up that night. What do you do? But it was cool because, after the game, I got one of those prints, those panoramic prints of the stadium. There's the picture in that print. Brett is actually on the field, up under center, and I am in the end zone with my arms raised. So it's a pretty cool piece of memorabilia for me to have. I also think about, when his father died, and the performance he put on against the Raiders. It was an amazing night. Truly incredible. Lots of great memories from Brett. Green Bay, from going to the Jets, going to the Vikings. I was really torn because I had grown up watching Brett and watching the New Orleans Saints. So there they are battling it out in the NFC Championship, and I really was I was glad to see the Saints win the Super Bowl, but I probably would have been just as glad to see Brett win another one. I actually ran into him a couple of weeks ago. I didn't run into him, but I saw him out eating at a restaurant, and it was the funniest thing because not too many people bothered him. I guess here in Hattiesburg, he's kind of, he's spread. He's been around. But I was sitting at a table near his, and he gets up to leave, and this lady, she was dressed in a really short skirt. She was with a guy that was probably like 30 years older than her. She runs up to ask him for a picture, and he obliged. So what does she do? She hands the camera to Deanna, his wife. I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And this is probably what he puts up with all the time. I guess I'm really excited about him getting inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We all knew this day was coming, but at the same time, it kind of gives a finale to the whole thing. And even though he hasn't played in a few years, you still feel like there's still something left. Not necessarily playing football, but it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like he's not gone. So my guest today is the man, the coach, who recruited Favre to play football at the University of Southern Mississippi back during the mid-'80s. He spent over 40 years in the coaching profession, with stops such as, of course, Southern Miss, the Marshall Thundering Herd, the Louisville Cardinals, the Florida State Seminoles, in the World League, in high school. The man's been all around. So please welcome my guest today. He is the author of 10-4, Brett Favre's Journey from Rotten Bayou to the Top of the NFL. Please welcome Coach Mark McHale. All right, we are here with Coach Mark McHale. How's it going today, Coach?
And it's going really good. I had a good visit with my son and grandsons on a beautiful Sunday.
Very good, very good. I'm holding your book in my hand. You wrote a book a few years ago called 10-4, Brett Favre's Journey from Rotten Bayou to the Top of the NFL. There's a lot that goes into this book, a lot of stories that people don't know, and a lot of things that are very intriguing. The story of Brett Favre is a very interesting story, isn't it?
It's an unbelievable story. I don't know if you piled up all the NFL players and you separated them, or how many made it to the NFL that had a very unique recruiting experience for college like Brett. It'd be a very small pile. And he happens to be one that, I don't know, it's just an unbelievable thing how he got recruited and that window of opportunity, how he just stepped in there and made his way to the top of the NFL. It's just an unbelievable story.
Well, and you obviously were the coach that recruited him while you were at Southern Miss. How did that process get started of recruiting Brett Favre?
Well, I got hired in the summertime, which was odd, usually in football turnovers in January. So I got there after what's called May recruiting, spring recruiting. And the fellow whose place I took each coach has a geographical area. So I inherited from south of Hattiesburg to the coast and all the way to Baton Rouge. That was my area of recruiting. And so I inherited a list of about 75 names that I had to follow up on for that fall in recruiting, and Brett's name wasn't on it. So as I traveled down through the coast, I had an assistant coach ask me, "Hey, Coach McHale, have you seen that Favre kid?" And I checked my list, and then his name wasn't on it. I heard it a second time in another school because they had a jamboree evidently where he got to throw a little bit. Urban didn't let him throw much. And I heard it a third time. When you heard it a third time, I called the high school and asked if I could come by there after I finished the 7 schools I was hitting that day, and just went over to investigate him at Hancock North Central. and ended up finding out that his dad was the head coach. His dad played baseball at Southern Miss, and that the guy he wanted me to recruit was his son. So I figured the guy whose place I took scratched him, So it was kind of unbelievable, all those things that I had recruited a long time and just figured I was wasting my time, if you would. And I actually got to meet Brett on that visit. And the most unbelievable thing was he's about 175 pounds, skinny. And he came up and looked me right in the eyes and said, "Coach McHale, I can play for you," with such confidence that when I left there, I kind of scratched my head. I was heading back to Hattiesburg, and I said, something's telling me deep in my gut I need to follow up on this guy, and I did. I followed up on him, and, of course, the book covers the process of recruiting him and what a journey that was.
What made you keep recruiting him at that point?
Well, I tell you, is I promised Irvin, his dad, that I would come by in the fall and watch Brett play a game. And I went by to watch him play a half, and I was hitting over to Gulfport High second half to go see two other teams that had recruits that I was evaluating. And so I called Irvin, told him I'd be there, And I watched him in pregame warm-up. And I saw the NFL arm in the pregame warm-up. And I didn't get to see it in the game because he was running the wing tee. I think he ran one pass where he dumped it to a back about 4 yards over the center. And that was it. So after the game, I stayed for the second half. So I said, well, surely he's going to throw second half. I'm here to watch him. And the same thing. He didn't throw maybe but one or two passes in the second half. Irvin said, well, what'd you think of my son? I said, Irvin, it's like those other tapes. If I take this tape back to our quarterback coach, he isn't going to approve him because he can't evaluate his arm. So, you got to come back a second time. I said, well, Irvin, I've got all these schools to go to and recruit. I can't be coming back. I did go back a second time. He probably threw it 4 or 5 times. But, I mean, one of them was like a 55-yarder that boy he hit in the end zone is probably still pinned up against that little cinder block field house today. And I just said, this guy's arm is just too precious not to recruit him. Just try to get him in the program. And that process was really hard to do in the selling, without the film. It was hard.
Yeah, I imagine with him not having any other offers and trying to sell him to the other coaches, I imagine it was a tough process trying to get him approved to get a scholarship offer.
And, it's unbelievable, too, was the 14 junior colleges at that time. They've changed, several years ago, but you would protect players in your area in the junior college, and he wasn't even on the protected list, which meant the other 13 JCs could recruit him, and none of them recruited him or offered him. None of them.
Wow.
Not even Pearl River. None of them. And this guy is thinking, until he got that phone call, he's thinking he's out of football and, what's he going to do in life? He probably wasn't even going to go to college, I don't think. I don't know.
Well, how did the process finish up? How did he finally get that scholarship offer from Southern Miss?
Well, the quarterback coach turned him down on film. But he left and went to Ole Miss. And our wide receiver coach was named the new quarterback coach. And I told Irvin, I drove down there to Irvin. I said, I got to have every single tape you got. Now, I must have gotten 8 of the 10 games. Came back and told Jack White, I said, Jack, this is a team that doesn't throw very much, but I want you to fast forward through the tapes. These are the old tape decks, that you used back then, and VCR. And so he probably looked at 2 or 3 of them, and I kept pressing him. He said, well, there's some things I like about him. I said, Jack, I'm just asking you, put his name on the recruiting board. He said, all right, I will, because it had to go through him, Everybody had to prove the linemen that I recruited. You put their names on the board. Anyway, he's up there. We start out with about 15, 20 quarterbacks. He's dead last at the bottom. The magical thing was Jim Carmody kept asking me on Thursday meetings, can he play another position? And about the second Thursday recruiting meeting we had, the bell rang, and I went, I got to tell Coach Carmody if he's a busted quarterback, he can play somewhere else. Coach Carmody, this is the coach's son. He plays free safety. He plays it like a daggone linebacker. He's tough. Daddy's been tough on him. He can play defense, and also he can punt. He's not a 40-yard average, but if we need a backup punter. So I sold that if he wasn't a quarterback, this is what he could do. Long story short, I did talk him into having him up for an official visit. He was the last recruit to visit that year, left there an hour late to meeting because all the other meetings overran, left without a scholarship offer, and the day before signing date, we had lost that linebacker in Atlanta. And Coach Carmody came up and said, we lost the linebacker. He said, can you call that Favre boy and we'll offer him as a strong safety. Do you believe that? That was unreal. It was absolutely unreal. I just knew if he got in the program, he would change the program. I just knew he would. Just a gut feeling.
For those that aren't familiar with Jim Carmody, Big Nasty, I mean, he loved those nasty guys on defense. So if you're going to sell him on a player, that's how you do it.
That was the magic key right there.
Well, he gets to Southern Miss, and he's way down on the depth chart. What was he, like sixth string?
Yeah, and we had three that we were working, two to rotate as starters, a third one. We had a couple of walk-ons that had been in the program a couple years and knew the system. He never got a shot in camp at quarterback on anything. And what happened was during two-a-days, they put Brett down there with a scout team when we started going scout team versus the defense. And Jim Tompkins, our defensive coordinator, told Coach Carmody, he said, Coach, you've been down there to watch scout team against our defense. He said, no. He said, you need to get down there. He said, watch this Favre kid. He's tearing us apart. And so Carmody went down there and watched him, and I think he was sold on him. We opened up with Alabama. He asked Jack to get him ready. He wanted the Favre boy just to play a little bit. Well, Jack was repping two quarterbacks, and, Brett hadn't even taken a snap in the game plan or anything. So we go to Alabama. He doesn't get in. So he mentioned him again to Jack. The second game, we're going to play Tulane. He said, I'd like to see a Favre boy get in. And Jack, we went to offensive staff meeting. He said he can't play because we were an option team. Brett wasn't an option quarterback. And lo and behold, at halftime, going in the third quarter, it was 14-14. But you could tell Tulane, the pendulum had swung, and Tulane's ready to take the game over. And for whatever reason, Jim Carmody stuck him in that game, and that boy hadn't been over the game plan, hadn't repped it, and took us to 3 touchdowns, won the game, and he started against Texas A&M the next week. It was unreal.
Oh, yeah, I was there that day, and, I can clearly remember just the excitement.
Can you remember that?
I remember that. As young as I was,
I can remember the ball hitting the receivers in the chest. Sounded like a cannon going off.
I just remember the guy sitting next to us in the sand says, he goes, who's this Favre kid? And Favre, and that was that. That was the end of that. Well, Brett, it didn't take him long to become a fan favorite, and while he was, so to speak, learning the position, he still had a great couple of years there, his first 2 years at Southern Miss. What was it like seeing that transition of Favre becoming a college quarterback?
Well, it was exciting because, I was in on recruiting him, and I wanted him to do very well, and I knew he would. And we probably didn't let him go as much as, we didn't center it around his arm. We were not a complete run team, but, we were probably 60-40, maybe a little higher in that run ratio to pass. And but I tell you what, I'm going to tell you a story just to tell you what he was like. We're at Auburn, his senior year. And at that time, it's the largest crowd in Auburn's history. Since Alabama started playing them there, it's become a bigger crowd. And I was in the press box calling plays. And That game got down. I don't know if you were at the game or not. That game got down to the last 8 seconds. We got one play left, one timeout. I called timeout. The press box, I mean, it's one of those games that Auburn was trying to intimidate us with the crowd noise. That press box was vibrating, and I mean, you could feel it just weaving up there. I could hardly hear. And I told Larry Edmondson at timeout, get Larry on the phone. I said, Larry, I need to speak to Brett. And I mean, I had to yell it 4 or 5 times. And Brett got on the phone. He said, yeah, Coach. I said, you feel like winning this game going home? He said, heck yeah. I said, Brett, what do you like to win the game? He said, I want to run the waggle pass and hit Preston Hansford on the drag. I said, I'm going to do you better than that. I said, Brett, they're a 3-4. They're going to blitz both outside linebackers. If we run the waggle, you run right into him, force your thrower to get sacked. I said, same route, but we're going to pull Chafin Marsh. He'll cut that outside backer down. You tell him in the huddle. And I said, dump it over to Preston and let's go home. And that sucker just had so much confidence. He went in there, and we faked the run. He booted out there. Chafin chopped the blitzer down. He dumped it into Preston Hansford. We won the game. But it was the idea that I had confidence in him. But in that situation, Brett, what do you want to do to win the game? That guy's he's going to do it. You know, he's just that kind of guy. And that was one of the most exciting moments I've ever been around. We almost did the same thing when we beat Florida State, if you remember that game.
Oh, yeah.
Did a little play action, and he dumped it to the tight end to win the game. But, you know, it was just, you're asking me to see him develop as a college quarterback. It was unreal. And then to watch him develop as an NFL player was outstanding. Because, you know, he had a window opportunity like he did at Southern Miss. Magic went down like third game of the year after Wolf, you know, got him traded from Atlanta. Magic goes down, they stick him in there, and he never lost his starting position, and the rest is history. And it was the same way as when Carmody put him in that second ball game. You know, he has a window opportunity. That guy had the confidence he was going to get it done. And he made the people around him believe, you know.
Yeah.
When we beat Alabama up in Tuscaloosa, the summer he had a foot of his intestines out. It wasn't because he played a great game, because we had to put him in like every third series because he couldn't play a whole game after the operation. But those players felt like they could win if he was in that huddle. They just felt it, and we ended up beating Alabama, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
He just had a way of getting the most out of the players around him. And he did it in the NFL. I'll never forget when he was traded to the Jets. One of the offensive linemen came in to shave in the dorm. He's there shaving, and Brett called him by his first name. And that guy said, I couldn't believe it. Here I am at the Jets. There's Brett Favre, you know, da-da-da. And he knew me by my first name. And he did the same thing when he got in the Hall of Fame at Green Bay. He goes in that conference room, and he names every janitor by name, saying, thank you, Tom, for taking care of us when I was playing here at Green Bay. That's what's unique about Brett. He's got great people relationships. Outstanding.
Definitely a down home country boy. I mean, that's just no other way around, no other way to put it. Well,
wasn't big business to him. I believe in my heart, if they'd have said, come play for $1 bill, we'll have you a trailer, and we'll feed you. Just come and play for that. He'd have done it, never asked for another penny.
You mentioned his freshman year a minute ago when took on Texas A&M, and there was a coach on that Texas A&M sideline that ended up being the head coach at Southern Miss the next year. What was the transition like to Curly Hallman during that time?
Well, Curly, knew about Brett because of that game, and he felt like we had a pretty good football player and a good leader there. So there wasn't, he was going to use Brett a little bit more, but still, Curly was a run first type guy. He wasn't going to just open it up because of Brett's arm.
All right, so you mentioned the game against Florida State, and that was a big deal because, at that time, Florida State was a top 10 team. I mean, this game was nationally televised on TBS. It took place in Jacksonville. Southern Miss sold the game to make some more money off of it to the folks in Jacksonville. And, lo and behold, Favre's junior year goes down there to Florida, defeats, Florida State in Florida on national TV.
Well, they were actually preseason ranked number 1 in the nation that year.
Oh, wow.
That was what's unbelievable. And then Bill McClellan figured we'd make more money playing them in their backyard, so the two ADs got together and settled on, the Gator Bowl to play. And I'm telling you, it was hot. They were taking people in stretchers out of the stands. It was one of those late August games.
Oh, yeah.
It was unbelievable hot. We had 500 and some yards, fumbled the ball twice inside the 12 going in at halftime and still had the lead. But, he came through. He threw one, and Bobby Bowden made the comment that, who's the fellow from Pascagoula was a nickel back in the pros. Trying to think of his name.
Buckley?
Buckley was covering the receiver, and Brett threw one, just barely went over Buckley's fingertips for a big 4th down conversion, and we took it on in to win the game. And that was probably the biggest play of the game besides the throwing the touchdown pass to win it. But man, we had some yardage against them, and they went to a bear defense. We didn't know it that opening game and all that. We had a lot of success, and it was just, what an awesome game. Preseason ranked number 1 football team, hot as heck, TV, like you said. And that was a great game for Brett to lead us to victory there. I'll never forget, he and Chris Riles were in that locker room. Everybody was like that Vince Lombardi deal, completely spent, sweating, couldn't even lift their arms and sitting there in chairs. And Brett and Chris looked at each other and said, "Can you believe we did this? Can you believe we did it?" It was just if you could have had a snapshot of that, that's what football's all about to me right there. And it was the underdog beating the superpower, and they had really worked hard that summer and had confidence that they could beat them. But that was an awesome game and really unbelievable.
You mentioned the wreck earlier, and for the people that don't know, that wreck, it's pretty amazing that he was even able to come back and ever play football again, much less come back that season to play.
I can remember sitting in the hospital with his mom, and she said, "Oh, Coach McHale, what are we going to do? It's over for Brett," because he's going thinking he's a first-round draft pick, weighing about 230, 235 going in his senior year. He said that hospital, he ended up weighing about 190 when he played that Alabama game. I said, "Miss Bonita," I said, "you got to be more optimistic than that." And there's Brett laying down there on his back and got hoses up his nose because they had to feed him with liquid because of that stomach. And I said, "Hit that button." And Brett hit it. And I raced the lunch menu off a little grease board. I said, "That's what we did today, Brett." Now, when we started talking football, his eyes got as big as watermelon. And I said, "Now, you're going to be out here, and you got to be ready. You hear me?" He said, "Yes, sir." That sucker couldn't even hardly move. He came out right at the tail end of two-a-days, and I can remember he was jogging like he couldn't even, just tippy-toe down that field. And I said, "Oh, my goodness, how long is it going to be?" And Curley didn't even announce him starting at Alabama the second game, and he played in that second game. He didn't play the whole game. We had to rotate him, And then after that third game, he was off and running. But, man, how tough can you be to have a foot of your guts taken out and play in your second ball game against Alabama? That's unheard of. Brett Favre was a special person to me, I'll tell you that.
Well, and wasn't that Gene Stallings' first year at Alabama as well?
Yeah, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, he won the national championship the next year.
Oh, yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how surreal was it for you, as being the guy who recruited him, to see him go through all these things, to see him get drafted, and then see him go on to the Super Bowl, win the MVP? How surreal was that, knowing that you had a part in all of that?
Well, I just really did feel like if I hadn't have been persistent, I don't think he'd have come to Southern Miss. I just think the good Lord somehow had his hand in that thing. And it was just one of those things that you look back on and say, how did it get done? And that And then my biggest thing is when this guy had a window of opportunity, he took off with it. I mean, it's a great lesson to all athletes and all people in life. You get a window of opportunity, go with it. And he sure did prove that. But it was just a heck of a feeling to be part of that process, to get him in that window of opportunity, because I knew that he had an NFL arm. That's all I can tell you. I just saw the arm. And if anybody else had seen the arm, they'd have said the same thing. I just knew the one thing you got to have to be successful in the NFL, you got to have a great arm, and that's what he had. And God blessed him with it, and he sure did use it a lot better than most folks.
A couple of years ago, you wrote a book with it has some text from Brett as well, called 10-4. Now, what did you learn about Brett through writing this book that you might not have known before?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I did learn was his dad was trying to play a trump card on me in recruiting. Said, Coach, Delta State's come by, and they want to offer him. They never offered him. And Brett never, he never talked to him about a scholarship or anything. And that was kind of the dad feeling out. He wasn't, I said, Urban, I got no control over this thing. I said, the only thing I do is just keep plugging for him. And I said, and I know this in recruiting, if I keep plugging and we lose somebody, that's what we got to count on. That's all we can do at this point. But that's something I learned in the recruiting process, is that Brett told half the story in my book. I would tell the story, Brett would tell his side of the story, and the Delta State things what came up in it that I wasn't sure about. That was interesting.
And this is a great book. How was this book received when it came out?
Well, I probably didn't get it marketed like I should have, but I've had high ratings on it, and everybody loves the book because most people don't read about recruiting and where people came from, and most people would assume a Hall of Famer was recruited by everybody, and that wasn't the case with Brett. So a lot of people didn't know that story on Brett Favre, on the recruitment story on him, and I just think from that and learning about the recruiting process and how many times you go back and the meetings and all that takes place there, I think it was a good eye-opener for the reader to find out all that background. What was I thinking? What was Brett thinking? What was his dad thinking? How did it all come together? And then how it happened to start his career in college and then in the NFL. At the time I wrote the book, he broke many, many more records since then, and being inducted in the Green Bay Hall of Fame and now the Hall of Fame. But I've had pretty good reception on the book. Everybody seems to enjoy it.
What are your thoughts on his upcoming induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Well, the first things, like you asked me, is I can go back to the first day I met him and met his dad. And to go to the Hall of Fame is just, to be that small part of that process, it's really special. It's just a special feeling.
Well, let's talk about you a little bit. How did you get involved in the game of football, and how did you get into coaching?
Well, I played college football at Shepherd University. They played for that national championship last year. And the guy that ended up being my college coach was my high school coach. They fired my college coach, and they hired him. Then I ended up working for him in college. And then I just went on from there and went all over the country and a little bit of the NFL Europe and Canadian League with Forrest Gregg, Ernie Stottner, the D coordinator, Tom Landry in the NFL Europe and so forth. And I even most recently was named head coach of AFL One Jackson, Mississippi Bullheads, and went about 3 months of combines, and that thing folded. And that's a long story. That would take an hour to talk about coaching and all that. But my biggest influence was my high school college coach, because I played for him in high school, played for him in college, and coached with him in college. You
coached some at Southern Miss for quite a few years, and then made stops at Louisville, South Carolina. You got to coach with Bob Pruitt at Marshall. What was your time like at Marshall?
Oh, one of the best guys I ever worked for, ever. He's a great man, a great family man, and he coached high school for a long time and never did get the big head as a head coach. And he treated me as good as anybody I've ever been treated by. And just, he was very successful. And I just love Bob Pruitt today. And man, we had a lot. I think I got a ring every year I was coaching with him. And, you know, he promoted me, made me coordinator, made me assistant head coach. I just had a great career with him and just loved him to death.
You had some great teams and some great players, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
Chad
Really
Pennington
did.
and Byron Leftwich, maybe?
Byron Leftwich is the era I was at. I had Steve Shulo that started 4 years and got drafted by the Colts, and he called me and said, Coach, I had my first practice today starting at right guard. He was a left tackle. He said, I got up there the first play, and Manning changed the play 10 times on a checkoff. It was something else. But he was it all. But had some really good kids and just enjoyed them all. And I stay in touch with them. I got 2 of them coaching high school ball, very successful. And they stay in touch all the time. That's what's fun about the profession.
You also spent some time at Florida State with legendary coach Bobby Bowden, who I believe you had some history with, if I'm not mistaken.
I did. I was a GA for him coming out of Shepherd, and then way down the road ended up going from Marshall to Florida State with Bobby Bowden. And my first year there, they hadn't won the ACC in a while, and I had 6 scholarship offensive linemen. We won the ACC in the inaugural divisional championship game down there in Jacksonville, where we beat Florida State. And then when we were at Southern Miss, it was kind of weird how that history kind of rolls right back around. And then we played Joe Paterno in the Orange Bowl. Boy, that was history. Those 2 coaches getting together. So that was a heck of an experience.
Had quite a few good teams there. Yeah, that Florida State's just a powerhouse. Just always one of the top programs in the country.
They are. I hit it. They were having some problems when I got there, and it started to go downhill a little bit. And then they made that change, in the head coaching deal. But it's unbelievable how they took that program that was going to drop football at one time. Miami and Florida State both were going to draw because they weren't making money. You have to make money in the programs. And Bobby Bowden got it turned around and became a great powerhouse, and then all of a sudden became the thing about the missed field goals, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
When I was coaching in the Orange Bowl, went into triple overtime, and all triple overtimes were field goals. We missed all 3. They missed 2, but they made the last one to win the game. Got down to that kicking again. That was unbelievable.
How long have you been in the coaching profession?
Well, I've been in it, I think, 42, 43 years, but within 1 year, I coached college, NFL Europe, and Canadian football. I went through 2 two-a-day sessions within 1 year.
Oh, my.
Because all 3 seasons roll in at different times of the year. So total teams coach might be around 45.
Wow. Goodness gracious. Well, right now, you're back in your hometown. I'm coaching at your alma mater, James Wood High School.
I'm back at James Wood High School where I played football with my high school coach, college coach, and coached with him. And back in my hometown and around my son and my 4 grandsons and just enjoying every bit of life.
How's it going there at the high school?
It's going good. We they had really gone through a bad ordeal, and they chopped up. We got new schools like everywhere else. They got kind of the raw end of the deal and the demographics with talent. But my second year, we took them to the playoffs, and we beat the in-town rivals we hadn't beat in 22 years and beat them in overtime, knocked them out of the playoffs. And we went, and it's no different if you beat Florida State on any level. Coaching is coaching, and you just get so involved in it, involved with the players. And it's just a great sport to be around, and it has so much value in teaching players the values of life. That's the biggest thing is you don't really understand how much you influence kids until they graduate and come back and talk to you about it. And it's just a great way to contribute to somebody's life at that molding age. It really is.
Looking back over your career, what would be some of your favorite moments?
Oh, I think when you're the underdog. And one year when we had Brett, I think the bookies had us underdog every game we played. And we ended up going 10-2 that year, played the Independence Bowl. Those upsets that year at Louisville, a Hail Mary pass by Brett Favre. In Hattiesburg, beating the Louisville team that beat Alabama in the Fiesta Bowl 34-7. We were the only team to beat Louisville that year. There's so many games, and most of them were at Southern Miss where we're the underdog. You know, when you're the underdog, that's where your reward is in coaching. If you're the top dog, Florida State playing Western Carolina or something, that's not, you know, when you're the underdog and you're winning, that's the most greatest feeling a coach can ever have. And most of those came while I was at Southern Miss.
Tell us about that Louisville game, the Hail Mary play. That's a play that's kind of gone down in infamy. I mean, it's kind of gotten more and more famous as you get the social media on the internet. That play went viral a couple of years ago. So tell us about that play at Louisville.
Well, he went back. You know, we had a designed Hail Mary pass, and actually Brett threw it, and it got deflected, and one of the receivers did not run the proper route, and he caught the deflection. And right when he caught the deflection, they always put the cannon off right with the last second text on the clock. And I remember that cannon and smoke going off right in that end zone. It was one of those most unbelievable things. Last second play, you know, you don't think you're going to win it. And he made that play, and he got chased all over the field by an NFL defensive lineman. And he just made the play. I mean, it was unreal.
You coached at Louisville for a little while. Do they still remember that play up there?
I guarantee you they do. They remember that, and they remember the game down there in Hattiesburg. And Arnsberger said there must be something about the moon in Hattiesburg, because he knew he had a better team than we did. He really did. He had a really good team that year.
Well, you mentioned keeping up with some of the players. Do you ever keep in touch with Brett?
Yeah, quite frequently, and go see him. I go see him when I can, and get to visit with him. And of course, we did the book together, you know.
Well, if any of the fans listening out there would like to get a copy of this book, they can email you directly at Bam McHale, BAMMCHALE @Comcast.net.
That would be good. That would be good. But
I was going to say, the book is called 10-4, Brett Favre's Journey from Rotten Bayou to the Top of the NFL. Any final words on the book? Any words on the book?
Yeah, 10-4. What the heck is 10-4? Brett's high school number was 10. I promised Brett that number when we signed him. He said, Coach, I just want one thing from you. I want my high school jersey number. I said, you got it, Brett. He went to the equipment manager to get his number. He said, Brett, we retired that jersey for Reggie Collier this summer. You can't get it. I got 72 and 4 left. Which one you want? He took number 4. But the 10-4 signifies going from high school at number 10 and making that number 4 as popular as it is today. And, of course, he wore 4 in the pros. So that 10-4 is from high school to college to pros.
And you got a lot of kids wearing that number 4 now.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Coach, thanks for joining us on the program. We really appreciate you coming on, and best of luck to you this season.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for asking me about all that, because those are some of the best memories I've ever had in coaching. And, of course, being around Brett, he's just such a special person, and he deserves Hall of Fame. And it's just unreal going from Kill, Mississippi back in those days when I watched him in that first game throw and say, this guy's going to be in the Hall of Fame. It's been unbelievable to watch his journey.
Coach Mark McHale, everybody. Terrific episode. Terrific stories. That's what I like about this podcast. You can get those stories that you might not get other places. This book is amazing. Be sure you check it out. The book is called 10-4, Brett Favre's Journey from Rotten Bayou to the Top of the NFL. Contact Coach McHale directly at bammchale @Comcast.net. That's BAMMCHALE @Comcast.net. if you'd like to watch Brett get inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and you were not fortunate enough to get tickets. You can watch him on the NFL Network Saturday, August the 6th at 8 p.m. Central Time. Do the math accordingly to figure out what time zone that you are in. Also being inducted is an honorary Golden Eagle. I'm going to call him an honorary Golden Eagle because his son will be playing at Southern Miss next year, Kevin Green. So congratulations to Kevin Green as well. Follow us on Twitter at Arring It Out. That's at ARRINGITOUT. Or follow me at Jamie_Arrington. You can follow us on Facebook as well, Arring It Out, as well as Jamie Arrington Comedy. If you need to email me, if you have some feedback you want to leave, or if you have somebody you think would be a good potential guest, email me, jamie@jamiearrington.net. Finally, the big show is coming up this Thursday night. We've been talking about it on every episode. This Thursday, July the 28th, 2016, Laughs for Life presents Frank Caliendo at the Sanger Theater in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. If you are anywhere in the vicinity, come out and check out this show. It's going to be amazing. Frank Caliendo, that's the guy you've seen doing all the impressions on ESPN over the years, and with Fox, I guess, if you backdate it a little bit. But this show is going to be 7:30 p.m. If you need tickets, go to laughs4life.com. That's laughs4life.com. All of the proceeds from this are going to the International Myeloma Foundation as well as the Forest General Cancer Center. I will be the MC. You'll get to see me. And keep in mind, there are a few tickets left. So if you're listening to this earlier in the week, go ahead and get your tickets because there's no telling what's going to happen on the night of the show. Come out and check us out. Thank you guys so much for listening to Arring It Out. Stay tuned. We'll have another episode coming up soon.